guys, I'm Leah and I'm your local plant expert here at Jacob's Trading. If you haven't heard of Jacob's Trading, check the description below. We have some information about our online store and our website. It's pretty cool, go check it out. Today we're going to be talking about why you shouldn't water your orchids with ice cubes. Orchids are tropical epiphytes, meaning that they grow on trees or stones without any soil like regular plants. There are many types of orchids, but the main grocery store orchid that you are going to find is the Phalaenopsis orchid due to them having a long flowering time. When you encounter an orchid in the grocery store, they typically have watering instructions on them that explain that you should water them with an ice cube. The idea of this is to prevent overwatering and thus death in your orchid, but the reality is that orchids are a tropical species and cold shocking them with ice cubes can decrease their lifespan. The most common arguments for the ice cube is that they prevent overwatering and that the cold causes a seasonal shock that will allow them to rebloom, but in many cases this is incorrect. When it comes to overwatering, the main problem is how they are potted in the first place. Typically in grocery stores, they are potted in a really dense sphagnum moss, or just regular potting soil, or they are potted in pots that have absolutely no drainage at all. Over time, this will cause a lot of issues, but if you follow a routine schedule and make sure you don't overwater them in the first place, this shouldn't cause an issue. Watering with ice cubes can also cause your orchid to become too dehydrated, thus causing death. This is because when you water with an ice cube, the ice will melt and trickle down into the medium directly under where you place that ice cube. Not all the medium is going to be impacted, leaving plenty of the roots dry and unable to access this water. Ice cubes are also going to cause issues to the roots that you put the ice cube directly on top of. Over time, this cold shock is going to cause the roots to die off. Once your orchid flowers start to die off, this does not necessarily mean that your orchid is going to die. Orchids will go through a blooming cycle, meaning that they will bloom again. For Phalaenopsis orchids, it is thought that shocking the roots with cold water will cause them to bloom again, but constantly doing this is going to be very detrimental. It takes a lot of energy for them to constantly bloom, and if you continue to do this, it will cause them to die over time. Something to also keep in mind is that orchids will bloom as a last resort right before death. This means that if you do water your orchid with an ice cube and they do bloom, it does not necessarily mean that they're a happy, healthy orchid. This could be the last bloom that you're ever going to see. The best way to water your orchid is to double check to make sure that it actually needs water in the first place. To do this, what you're going to do is either stick your finger all the way into the medium to make sure it is completely dry, or if you have a clear pot like this one, you can tell by just looking at the roots. If the roots are nice and silver, that means that they could use some water, but if they're still bright and green, that means you can wait off a little while. When watering your orchid, the best method is to use dechlorinated room temperature water in a container, and you're going to soak your orchid for about 5 to 10 minutes. When doing this, you're going to want to make sure that you don't get any watering to the crown of the orchid, and that you're going to want to make sure all the water drains out before you put it back into its original container. Following these simple steps are going to ensure that your orchid is going to bloom for many years to come, and that it's going to be happy and healthy. Specifically, just don't use ice cubes. So that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe. We're putting out videos regularly. Stay in bloom, don't kill your orchids.